People think it's cool, and then he smiles, and for a while I'm in love.
Hi, welcome to episode 7 of River's Knitting Chronicles. I am River, also known as River Cameron on Ravelry. On Ravelry, we have a group, and we've been talking a lot and having a pretty good time. We are up to 61 members, so I'm really excited about that. And if you enjoy the show and want to come and chat with us, just stop on by. It's called River's Knitting Chronicles, creatively enough, and join us and just jump right in. If there's a thread that talks about stuff from an earlier episode and you're new or you're old and you've had a new idea about it, please don't just completely ignore, do completely ignore it's been so many days since someone responded to this. As people keep finding me and as we're growing, there might be something from an earlier episode you want to discuss, and I'm totally happy to talk about some of the older things that have been on the show if you have something you'd like to say about it. So feel free, and I'm totally happy with anybody jumping into any of the old topics. Don't worry about how long it's been since anyone posted to them. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. I have what, in my estimation, and I'm not going to make a second one, have a finished object. And the pattern is called Lebowski. It was the third pattern for the Tour de Sock, if you were a part of that this summer or if you weren't. And it just wasn't the right sock for me. My feet, I guess, are shaped a bit different than this. And so I also, if you've seen the past episodes, you know that I'm not a very long-term knitter. I've only been knitting for a few years, and so I still make some beginner mistakes. And most of the other socks that I've knit have been lace socks, so I've been able to knit what seems about right, understanding that they'll stretch. Because these were color work, I went up a size, and I shouldn't have. And if you like these socks and want to give them a try, my advice to you is don't worry about it being color work. They're not going to dry in at all. Go ahead and knit your size, or even if you've got nice stretchy wool yarn, go a size smaller if you like a snug fit with your socks, which I do. So I wish I'd have done that. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't knit them again. I would be willing to try them again if there weren't hundreds practically of other pairs of socks calling my name in my queue. But anyway, so I want to show you these. It's called Lebowski, and it is inspired by the film The Big Lebowski, and they have 3 types of color work in them. They have the stripes, so it's not self-striping yarn. You do the stripes. This section and this section here is mosaic knitting, where each round was done in a different color, and when you came to where it should be some of that color in it, you slipped the stitch so that it kind of stretched up. So, see if I can get close up. So like this round, this round was knit all in blue, but you slipped up the white to get the white in between the blues, and then the next row was knit in white, and you would slip on the blue to get the blues up, if that makes sense. If you've not done it before. It's some of the easiest types of color work that I've done, and so I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed getting to play with that. This part here is stranded color work, which I've done a lot of that before, so that wasn't anything new. I enjoyed my color combinations. The third type of color work on this is the heel, and this heel is done. You can really, honestly, you could strand this, and with the exception of through the main part of the body, you'd probably be fine. But I did it in tarja as they wanted us to do in the Tour de Sock, and I'll show you that in a minute. But so it's like an eagle. There's a cartoon with an animal with a head that looks like this, and I cannot for the life of me think of what that is. But I can picture him clear as day in my head, and I keep thinking, that's him with wings. And it's got 2 arrows on the sides. I'll show you my intarsia on the inside. I guess I didn't need to turn the whole thing inside out. So, there he goes. So there's the eagle. On the end. So for this part, I guess the intarsia makes sense, but I think you could have stranded through the wings, or I could have stranded through the wings and through the head, and been just fine. It was my first intarsia. I went ahead and gave it a try, in part to give it a try. I wanted to see what it was like. I wanted to see if I could do it. My advice, if you've never done intarsia and want to try it out, as soon as you get to the end of a row, or maybe... Yeah, I wouldn't do it immediately, but as soon as you get to the end of a row where you've added a color, weave in that end from that color you just added. Because if you don't, you end up with twice the number of dangly strings than what you need to have, and there's already all these dangly bits on there anyway. So weave in those ends, and as soon as I wised up and did that, it got a lot easier. There is one mistake that you can't see from not weaving in those ends. Like, you can't tell, but there's one part here where I went across with the tail. I think it was a white section. I went across with the tail rather than with the main color, and it took me a while to figure out how to... I think I ended up coming back with the tail because I'd left a fairly long tail, and then wove it in so that I didn't have that problem again. But yeah, it's a lot of strings that hang down. Other than that, it does help to not have all of those floats, especially if it's a long section and you're concerned about puckering. I generally am pretty good about puckering, but if it's something that you have a problem with color work, or again, if it's a really long section where it doesn't make sense to strand it, I'm glad that I know how to do it now for future things. My problem with it is that it really doesn't fit my foot. My heel is a lot more narrow than that, which again, my fault. I did the wrong size, and so I've just kind of... I think it would make a cool Christmas stocking, so I'm very tempted to... It's got this great big space in here for some nice size presents. Just duplicate stitch my name on it and use it for the holidays, because now it looks like a Dr. Seuss sock. Yeah. It's not one of my shining moments. But I do like the colors, I do like the yarn, and I don't dislike the pattern. I think, though, that this heel specifically, because to get the eagle it needs to go so wide, I think it would fit a man's foot a lot better than if he was a man with wider feet. That's me making assumptions. They wouldn't fit my husband. My husband has incredibly narrow feet. My husband has feet like... I was telling my friend, he has feet like 2x4s, except for turned sideways, so that they're taller than they are wide. He don't know how he doesn't fall down. He does, actually. He's a bit clumsy, but he's just got weird, super narrow feet. This would never... He said, oh, I'd wear those. Those are pretty cool. No, his foot would certainly not fit either. So anyway, Lebowski. Nothing against the pattern at all. It's some user error and a heel that, because of the patterning, doesn't fit. I think even if I'd done the right size, I don't think it would have fit. So, Christmas or something like that. I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot, and that's the point. So, okay, so that's what's finished. What is on my needles right now, I will show you the thing I'm most proud of. I didn't get as far as I told you guys I would, so apologies for that. Well, not really apologies, but I am one of those people who always thinks they can knit faster than they can, and I am all sorts of tangled here. I'm one of those people who thinks they can knit faster than they can, and I'm just... Luckily for this project, I think I've wanted to be done with the body before I recorded again. In my head, if I could be done with the body by the 15th and onto the sleeves by then, I think that's enough time to confidently know that I'll finish by the end of the month. If I end up at the sleeves on the 20th, giving me 10 days for 2 sleeves, it'll be a lot of stressful knitting. but it's still a possibility. If we get to the 25th and I'm not on the sleeves, I probably won't finish this month. So that's kind of where I'm thinking in my head. I really want to get to the sleeves by the 15th. I'd have been further along today, but we went and saw Despicable Me 2, and if you haven't seen it, stop the podcast, turn it off, get in the car, go to the movies and see this movie, because it was so funny. So funny. I laughed so loud, and the whole theater was cracking up the whole time. The first one got a little slow in the middle for me. I'm generally not a movie person, but there wasn't a slow moment. Everything was hilarious. I just love this, and now I want a gray scarf, but that'll be a different day. So anyway, to my sweater. So I didn't get to work on this much today, so I'm not as far along as I'd hoped. But oh, now it's folding up so you can't see. I'm through the waist shaping. I'm through the waist stitches, the inches that go after the waist shaping. And I am just about to start increasing back out, which puts me almost at the bottom, because this is not supposed to be a long long sweater. It's supposed to go to right at the hip bone. So I don't like stuff that's going to draw lines across my tush. It's got enough definition back there for itself. So here it is. Look at that. I was really hoping I'd be wearing it for you today, but and there's the back. If you've been watching the whole show, I want to say first episode it was just the collar. So a bonus side effect to podcasting is that you get to really watch literally your stuff grow. Seeing it every day, you don't realize how much it's growing. But yeah, it is called, the pattern is called the Vodka Lemonade. It is by Thea Coleman. I am knitting it on Madeline Tosh DK in the colorway Tart. I am using, and maybe someone out there can help me out, I also started making stitch markers, and they're not really showing. They're gold ones with little red beads. The problem is I'm using the glue that they said to use in one of the making stitch markers tutorials, but none of my beads are sticking, so I'm having trouble. My snagless stitch markers are snagging all over the place, so that's giving me some trouble with this sweater. But I'm very, very proud of this sweater. This way. I'm very proud of this. I don't think I've ever done anything this big or labor intensive and gotten this anywhere close to this far along. So I know it doesn't look quite like much while I'm having to kind of wad it up for you to see it, but so that's how you do the sleeves, is with the yarn overs. And let's see here. Oh, that body. See there? So happy with it. So hopefully, yes, because I think I film or record the 19th, I think is next Friday, and I I'm probably going to be a bit nervous if I'm not working on sleeves by the next, I know that I will be nervous if I'm not working on sleeves by the next episode. The next thing I want to show you is actually a new cast on. I was watching the Knit Girls, and they're actually the second podcast I ever started watching. My first was Let's Knit Together, and I got through all of her regular episodes, and then near the end it was a lot of interviews with, I was still a very new knitter, so I didn't know who the people she was interviewing were, and so at that point I started looking for other things, and that's when I found the Knit Girls, and then from there I found a bunch others, but they were, Let's Knit Together's not on the air anymore, but so they're the longest podcast that I've been watching, and so I feel like I know them, which is weird because they have no idea who I am, I'm sure. But anyway, so I was watching their last show, number 165, and they did a book review from a book that was sent to them from Cooperative Press called Stitchin' in the Stacks, and it's a book inspired by librarians. and library and working with books and things like that. And so I'm not going to do a review because they did a great job with it. But generally, I'm not really... I actually loaded it on here for you so that you could see why I bought it. Generally, I watch these book reviews and I think, I'd really like that at some point. That's great. But generally, they will focus on sweaters and things like that that are a big commitment in yarn, you have to kind of plan ahead for something that big. And so I went on after they did the review. I don't think they talked about the silly, silly reason I bought the book. But as I'm going on, I saw one pattern that was in this book, and I hit the buy it button on Ravelry and downloaded the book. And I'm generally not a pattern, excuse me, I'm generally not a pattern impulse shopper, but I saw this little guy, and I couldn't not buy this book. And he's called... It's so silly. It's the silliest reason ever to buy a book full of patterns. But I did. And it is called Bookworm. And let's see if I can fix this so that you can see. Look at him! How ridiculously cute is that? And the little fingers, and he has a little book, and he has giant eyes. Is that not the cutest thing in the history of the world? I'm trying to make sure you can see him. How cute is that? So I saw him and said I have to and it's like he was sitting across from the register at Target, and I grabbed him and stuck him in my cart. It was the same kind of ooh feeling. And so I bought the book. That's not actually what I'm working on. What I'm working on, and there are other really great things in here that are not sweaters. And what I'm working on is not a sweater, and I flipped the page, and so it's being a little slow. Here, I'll see if I can get it to load while I show you. They had a Nook, an electronic book cover, and it's done in 5 sizes for 3 different sizes of Kindles or 2 different sizes of Nooks. Yeah, this is getting almost there. That should be that page. 3 different sizes of Kindles or 2 different sizes of Nooks. And so this is the Nook cover. This is the start of the Nook cover from the Stitching in the Stacks. I wish I could show you the pattern. I don't know why it's being silly. One thing I want you to notice. Let me get this. This is the yarn for my Nook cover. Oh, there it is. It's Malabrigo Tiziano red Malabrigo sock. Oh, because they are going to look the same. They're really pretty red, not this orange, but this is Madeline Tosh Tart. It's a really difficult colorway to find. Malabrigo Tiziano red, not so much. See how much the same they look to you? Even though they're actually red and not this kind of rusty orange that you're seeing, that's how the same they look. And they literally look like they came out of the same dye bath. So if you're dying for some Malabrigo Tart socks, get the Madeline Tosh Tart socks, order the Malabrigo Tiziano red. They look literally identical. They were sitting on the bed. I was swapping back and forth a row sweater, a row or 2 of Nook, and it's like, wait a minute. The difference is the weight, that this is a sock and this is a DK. Literally the colors are practically identical. So in the nail polish world, I think they call those dupes. It's ridiculous how... Guess what my favorite color is? Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting when I noticed that, and I know that Tart is one of those colorways that a lot of people... Oh no, it popped up. There it goes. A lot of people really like and want to get and feel like they can't find. There's at least one dupe in the Malabrigo family. Okay, so this is what the nook cover will look like when it is finished. I'm going to put the Ex Libris down lower and not do the whatever that's called, monogram on it, because I don't care for the monogram. But that's what it's going to look like. If my purse were closer, I would show you why I need a new one. The one that I have right now for this nook, I knit a long time ago, and it looks like cat yak. Actually, it's looking really rough, and so I think this is going to be. So that's what it's going to look like. Here's what I've got so far. I'm knitting this on my. Here's where I also think, and this might lead back into that sock. This is sock yarn. So, and there's cat hair on it. This is sock yarn, and so I immediately went to start using the needles that I generally use for socks, which are my 3s, which are the needles I did that sock in. And it was humongous. And so I don't own 2s, but I do own those 1.5s. Now, I tried to make socks with them last year, and they seemed like they could be used for battle armor. They were so incredibly dense and just terrible to touch, and that was, I want to say that was the Mad Tosh yarn as well, so I know that that's soft. So that's when I got the 3s. So if I'd have had a 2, I think that probably would have been a better fit. As it is, it seems like it's going to be a little snug, but I think when I block it, it just needs to come out a tiny bit like this. If I'd have had 2s, I probably wouldn't have needed to block it. It probably would have just been perfect to size. I might have to do a few extra rows. But this is telling me that my tension might be loosening up some, and I probably need to get some 2s to try for socks in the future, and that might help me to get a better fit as well if my tension is loosening like that. Okay, what I am not showing you today is the Geyer cowl. If you would like to see it, it's in every episode prior to this one. It's really pretty color work. It's just that it hasn't been out of the bag since the last episode, and I just feel terrible. It's making me feel guilty to show it over and over again. It is about to start living on this shelf, which normally houses my whips of shame, because it's a cowl that has been on the needles for, a month and a half now. And I'm not racing to finish it anytime soon. I don't actually need it done until beginning of September, so I don't know how. Once I finish the nook cover, there's a really good chance I'll go back to that, but this has a deadline. I need to finish it by the end of the month for Harry Potter House Cup. And my sweater also has to be finished by the end of the month because it is my owl, which is a 2 to 3 month project for Harry Potter House Cup. So I have 2 things that need to be done by the end of the month, and so the cowl isn't going anywhere near my hands until at least one of those is finished and off the needles. But as you can see, I've removed a bunch of stuff from my Whips of Shame shelf because I wanted to share them with you. The first, and I meant to, and hold on just a second, the yarn fell down. The first was my owl a while ago, and I meant to say how long these were on the needles. This is the Ocean Spray, and my notes fell down. It is by Galea Lael, L-A-E-L. It's a nitty pattern, so it's free. I still have one of my. It's on a circular, and so what happens here is it starts out fairly solid, and then as you go, you get more and more yarn overs, and it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And then you have this really beautiful edging. So changing the color for the edging was my idea, and I'm showing it to you wrong. The edging, this doesn't actually goes like this. So I haven't gotten very far with it. Yeah, the edging goes it goes this way. So it'll go all the way around. My idea when I started it was that it was going to be Gryffindor colors, so it's red and then gold. And I got the gold yarn. Oh, there it is. I got the gold yarn on Etsy from an indie dyer. I would link it, but I got it so many years ago that there's no way she's still got this. I'll check, and if she does, I will absolutely link to her shop. But it was, I don't know how that looks to you, but it actually looks gold, not yellow. And so when I finish this, it's going to be very pretty. But I just got super, super sick of the back and forth and the back and forth. And then by the time I started in the lace, this was supposed to be an owl, a 2 to 3 month project. And I got into the lace, I got that little bit done, and the term ended and left me in the dust. And as soon as I no longer had the deadline over my head, I completely ignored it. I finally took the needles out, but the cable is still in it. And I really like it, and now that I've been looking at it again, I want to get back to it at some point. So once I get the sweater off the needles and the nook cover, the way the Harry Potter house cup works, I think I mentioned this, is there's a month break. So I think during break month of August, this will be a good project to kind of, if I can figure out where I was, pick, even if I can't, that lace, as you saw, was a small section. I might be able to just rip that little bit back and get back to it and redo. All I have to do is that lace edging, and I love to knit lace, so it's a little embarrassing that I haven't finished this. But so I think in August I'll get back to this and have it. It's lace weight, so it's not going to be a very warm shawl, but I live in Florida, so I don't need super warm shawls. My other whip of shame was a miscalculation. There's a independent yarn dyer called Nerd Girl Yarns who does amazing stuff, and a lot of it is inspired by different, not indie, but different, like Doctor Who and different fandoms. That's the word I'm looking for. And so I bought some bulky weight dyed in the color of the TARDIS to make a shrug. And it got here, and I went to start the shrug, and I looked at it again, and I said, and I changed my mind. So I took the yarn, and I looked at this pattern, and I thought, that's gorgeous, but I'm not sure I'm going to have enough. And I never listen to myself when I say I'm not sure I'm going to have enough. I really need to start listening to I'm not sure I'm going to have enough, because I keep doing this to myself. So this isn't it gorgeous? It's TARDIS blue, and it's a hood. And so this part folds back, except for, because of the hole, I'm not sure if I have enough. I did it half the length so that I wouldn't need to fold it, but I think I would still fold it. And here's so it goes on the head like this. And then what I'm missing is, it needs a ribbing around the bottom and a button band here that holds it closed. So if I lived or visited someplace colder, if we had every 3 or 4 years we have a particularly cold winter. 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember how long ago it was. It wasn't too long ago because Liam was in school. Like, we had snow, it got that cold, and snow that stuck to the ground. So every once in a while we have a nice cold snap. And this would be, I think, something that would be great with a coat on, and then you don't want, the coat doesn't have a hood, but you don't want the bulk of putting a hoodie under it, then you could just have a hood. It's all cabled. It is called, I'm sorry, I did not say that before, it's called Through the Woods. I also had that Through the Woods hat that I showed, I think, last week. So it's called Through the Woods, and it is by Kalurah, Kalurah. Some people did it in red, and that was gorgeous too, like a Red Riding Hood kind of thing. And so this is how much yarn I had left when I realized, oh darn. My concern is that she hand dyes all of these. They're dyed to order. And so it will there's no chance of getting the same dye lot. It's not she dyed mine by itself. And a year and a half ago or so. So I'm going to take a risk because it is such a solid and it's TARDIS blue. I'm assuming that the formula stays the same. And since I'm just adding on to the bottom with a ribbing and a button band, that it's not in the middle of like the cables or anything. I'm hoping that it's not going to make too big of a difference if it is slightly off. But I love this, and even though it seems awfully impractical for Florida, I do want to finish it. I think it's gorgeous. I'm embarrassed that I did that with the yarn. I knew better. I knew the whole time, and I just really hoped that I was wrong, and I knew better. So, question of the week is, what is your oldest whip of shame, or whip of hibernation, or just unfinished piece, even if you plan to never finish it and you plan to frog it at some point? So what is the oldest thing that you've got sitting around? And I'll put in the thread exactly how old those are. I'm sorry, I really thought about it and didn't write it down when I was making the show notes. One thing that I wanted to mention, and we're going along again, Nerd Girl Yarns. It is run by, on Ravelry, her name is Linux Chick, and she's just great. I met her through the House Cup. We were both on House Cup staff for a while together, and she's wonderful. The things she dyes are amazing. I'll put a link to her shop. But she is also, and we talked last week about our community here and the independent dyers and the independent designers who are working out of their house and doing all of this, and how close we are and how we get to interact with the person who actually made your yarn or the person who actually wrote your pattern. And so she's the person who actually dyes your yarn. And Nerd Girl Yarns has grown by leaps and bounds, and it's grown so big she can no longer keep it growing and keep her customers happy sorry, in her kitchen. And they tried moving down into the basement I know it's a long story. It's in her Ravelry group. They tried moving into another part of her house. That's already not working, and that was just done recently. And so she has found a shop that she can have a small storefront, and she can have a workshop, and she can have dyeing instruction, and people come in and take lessons, and she can have employee, and she can really grow her business. And I'm super proud to know her, and I'm super proud for her and happy for her that she's so successful, because she's amazing and she does wonderful work. She is trying really hard to not have to take out any loans, though, to move into the new facility and to get the things that she needs to make it appropriate for dyeing. And so she has a fundraiser. I'm not quite sure which site, that off the top of my head I don't remember, but I'll put a link. But it's not just donate to me, it's donate to me, and you can get different things if you donate at different levels. And so there's a level where you donate and you get yarn, or you donate and you get yarn and a project bag. And so you get to, again, support this wonderful community that we have, try to help keep our independent designers and dyers independent and doing their thing on their own terms, and you get stuff. And so I know what level I'm going to do, because I like stuff. And I'm just, please don't feel like I'm saying you got to do this or you have to do this. I'm not trying to guilt anyone into anything. But if you like her yarn, and want to contribute and also get a little bit back in return and be a part of this community that way, feel free, do it. I'm going to do it. You can do it. Okay, so I'm long again today. The last thing I want to talk about is next Saturday. If you are in the North Florida, South Georgia region, remember that Yarn Therapy here in Tallahassee is hosting a yarn tasting with Cascade, and it's being sponsored and hosted by Cascade. It's from noon until 3. There's going to be refreshments. There's going to be door prizes. I'll be there. I think it will be fun. I've never been to anything like this again, but if you're in the area and it's a reasonable drive for you and you want to come down and check it out and check out our community here in the Tallahassee area, please do. It'll be fun. I'm going to enjoy it. I hope. Never been, so I've been to the shop, and the owner is the sweetest lady, nicest lady. The people who are in there always so friendly, so welcoming, always happy to chit chat or not, depending on what you want. It's just a really nice, friendly, warm, open space, and I think that if you're in this running area and you've not been, it's a good excuse to come down to Tallahassee and check it out. Okay, so finally, I just want to shout out to a couple of other podcasts that have been brightening my day. So a shout out to Nicole from Positive Knitting. I talked about her a little bit last week and challenged her to make the Lebowskis for her husband, because I've seen other socks she made for him, and I think that pattern would definitely fit his feet. If you've not seen her podcast, she's great energy, really happy person. She really makes you feel like you're sitting there knitting with her. And crocheting, and that's one thing that I don't know how to do. It's not on my show. At some point, she has challenged me to learn how, and that's also, it's on my list, but there's lots of things on my list. I don't know when I'll be able to get to it. But if you enjoy crochet and would like to share and see what other people are crocheting, she's great. She does knitting and crochet, and she does a lot of really interesting things that I'd not even thought about that you could do with crochet before. So check her out. She's Positively Knitting, and she has a group on Ravelry, and I will link you to that. The other one is brand new, and she's only got 2 episodes now, and she's called Knitting Dish. And if you watch Knit One Heart Two, she's from the Massachusetts, Boston area, so she talks like they do if you enjoy hearing their accents. Again, another great energy, really comfortable in front of the camera, and I really enjoyed her show. She did a little bit of, I don't cook, but there was one recipe near the end that she kind of talked about. But for the most part, she's knitting. She's done some really good work, some really pretty things to show. Again, she feels like you're sitting in at knitting club or knitting group and just listen to someone share their stories, and she's really great for that. So check them out if you've got some time and want to see who else is out there. And so that's all I have for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I'm super happy that we're 7 episodes in. Remember, if you want to learn more about anything I talked about today, the show notes are at riversknittingchronicles.com. That is the blog site, and the show notes have their own separate blog posts. So those tend to go up as this is processing, so that'll go up and then the video. So it will have already been there. Their Ravelry group is Rivers Knitting Chronicles, and so you can just search for us in the groups tab. If you would like to check us out on YouTube, it's Knitting Chronicles is the YouTube channel. If you'd like to reach me on email, it's riversknittingchronicles@gmail.com, and no one's emailed me, but if you would like to, feel free, or you can PM me if you'd like on Ravelry, River Cameron. Or you may follow me on Twitter, and my Twitter name is I am River Cameron. My Twitter name is not River Cameron. Someone else is me, but not me. It's a boy. It's weird. I think he's British. But so if you follow I am River Cameron, and there's a link to following I am River Cameron on the blog. So those are all of the 5 gazillion different ways to get up with me. It's a weird world sometimes, I think. Anyway, thank you so much for watching the show. If this is your first show, thanks for checking me out. If you've been here since the beginning, well, I'm just overwhelmed by all of it and having a really great time, and that's because of you guys and the feedback that you're giving me. And thank you again, and I hope to see you next week. Okay, bye.
He's got thick brown hair, blue eyes that stare into your soul. He makes me feel so pretty, like I'm the only girl in this city.